I've always been a big fan and have had massive respect and admiration for what Anthony Fantano has done for millions of people, turning them onto music that they wouldn't have otherwise heard, myself included, both for metal and the broader musical landscape as a whole. But coming from a metal YouTuber whose content primarily concerns metal, rock, and experimental music, I wanted to sort of add my piece in a way that I haven't really heard many people do in regards to Anthony Fantano and metal, because it usually is handled with a lot of black and white animosity or love, as opposed to some sort of diversity or some sort of nuance to the argument, with people either saying that they just hate him, he knows absolutely nothing about metal, and he's a fucking poser, he'll never be true cult, or on the alternative, people saying he can have his own opinion, he's a wonderful reviewer, and he's turned a bunch of people onto music. And I think both sides have their merit in consideration, because I think both kind of have parts that are true and some parts that are false. But coming from a metal background, I think the thing that I have noticed, and my big gripe with how he approaches metal reviews, is knowingly stepping into genres that he notoriously and habitually shits down the throat of, trying to add some sort of new enveloping conversational aspect into the field that just does not belong there. And what I mean by this is everyone is going to have biases, everyone's going to have preferences and lean. No matter what kind of reviewer you are going to have some biases. You're going to have some genres and sounds that you prefer more than others. And it's always been obvious the type of things that he prefers and the types of things he doesn't. And with metal, there are some genres that are always targeted in a specific way, that he either takes these little side jabs when he talks about other stuff about them, or when he does review them, it's almost always the same scores for all of the records in that niche, and he always comes up with complaints that are less solely aimed at the projects that he is reviewing, and more so a generalization of the genre itself, which tells me and indicates that he just doesn't have a specific taste for that genre as a whole. And with hundreds upon thousands of releases releasing every single month, every single year by the tens of thousands, if he really wanted to review more metal releases, it would be cool if he were to step into the lane of things that he does enjoy, things that he can talk positively about. Now, this is in no way saying that I think negative reviews shouldn't exist, because absolutely I think they should, and those are also great for the niche because they turn people onto that music anyway, and it's still exposure. But by the same token, my biggest gripe, like I said, is how his complaints and his critiques usually will boil down to gross generalizations of the genres that those records exist in, as opposed to criticisms of the record itself. And this is most prevalent with metalcore music, specifically modern and 2000s metalcore music that didn't abide by the beat-down hardcore style of hardcore punk-infused metalcore that he grew up with, the New England sort of metalcore music, as well as deathcore, gent, and progressive metal. These are all genres that kind of get the same complaints thrown on them every single time I hear him cover these releases. And while I can understand why he may not have liked some of these releases because they were releases that I didn't particularly like, I think he spent a lot less time talking about said releases and more so making these commentaries about the genre itself, which, if you don't have a preference for something, that's totally fine, but I don't think it's worth wasting your time going into something with these preconceived notions of just not liking it, in the same way that when he steps into a death metal or black metal or a grindcore record, chances are he's going to have a lot more fond appreciation and respect right off the bat just for the stylistic elements, even if the record isn't that good. And this is something that, as a person that literally covers this niche primarily on this channel, I have genres that I don't particularly cover because most of the time, 9 times out of 10, they are not going to be my cup of tea. Most of the time, that is like things like extreme noise music, as well as, I've always said this, power metal and speed metal are usually not my specific cup of tea. I'm not a big power metal fan, and I've said that many times. I also don't like a lot of like epic, theatrical, overblown, hyper-produced, sort of like Flesh God Apocalypse type music, although I do like them as a band. That's usually not my cup of tea either, sort of the folk tradition, even though I do love a lot of folk-infused music. Folk metal doesn't usually do too much for me. So for Anthony, I don't think it's fair to just demonize him for not liking something you like, because a reviewer is not ever going to be the gospel, and the whole point of it is constructive criticism, avid music discussion, and it's just the opinion of one person anyway. I think it's much more interesting to delve into what he gets wrong specifically, and my personal opinion as someone who has watched him for years years upon years cover pretty much every metal and rock release that he's ever talked about, I've noticed this trend in the things that he appreciates and the things he doesn't. And while a reviewer is always going to be inclined to have some sort of bias or some sort of preconceived notion about certain genres, I think that it kind of gets a little over the top if you continuously cover said genre only to say the same talking points, because you're eventually going to run out of something and it's just going to be redundant. Because if I were to cover a bunch of new power metal releases that drop, I'm going to have a lot of the same things to say about all of them, and it's going to be less about the band itself and more so it just not being my cup of tea, and so that's going to cloud my judgment with judging the quality of something. And I can look at something objectively and say, this piece of media is good if that is something you are into, and I recommend it if these parameters are met and if this is your criteria for what you enjoy. But I'm not going to sit here and cover them needlessly over and over when there are so many other releases that I will get more personal enjoyment and fulfillment out of, but also come out the other side having something interesting to add to the conversation, something interesting to talk about, whether it be thematically or lyrically or stylistically, influence-wise, whatever it may be. Like, I will have something to add to that conversation, something with substance to give you guys. And coming out of a lot of his metal reviews for the genres that I listed, I feel like I don't really learn anything new about the records. I don't think I learn anything new about the genre, and I don't really learn any more about how he feels about it, because it just feels like it's a regurgitated take that he has already passed on to so many other releases that fit that narrative. But what are your guys' opinions of Anthony's takes on metal and this specific topic as a whole? You can let me know down in the comment section below what your thoughts of this are. I can't wait to hear it. Be sure to like this video if you enjoyed it, subscribe to join the review family today, and smash that notification bell to be notified of my future uploads. You know who it is, my name is Jay Morris, and I'm signing off saying farewell.